Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the May edition of Bar Talk. We are going to be, after today, taking our summer hiatus. We'll be back in September, and in September, October, and November, we will be continuing the well-being theme with issues with talking about um, mental health, feeling good, social, occupational health, and that's kind of aligning. Um, I got now I can't remember what the occupational health one is, but how to grow in your career. And Angela, remind me what the third one is. Oh, and volunteering and how to connect with your community, all of which help you with your well-being. And those are basically during these bar talks, we'll be covering the 5 themes from the Institute for Wellbeing in Law's Wellbeing Week in Law. So I really appreciate everybody coming. Hope we'll see you at the next 3 so that you can learn all about attorney well-being. Just a couple of updates. We are currently seeking an office administrator and a section and committees coordinator and a membership and CLE coordinator. Our membership and CLE coordinator has been promoted to our membership director, and so we need to fill her position as well as 2 others. Also, registration is open for the summer bar meeting, June 26th through 28th in Bar Harbor. We have a great program set up for that. We have a group of well-being seminars as well as things that run the whole gamut of the practice of law. So I think we've got a great program. And for more information, you can go to our website. The member benefit highlight is Main Bar Connect, which is our online community platform where you can connect with section members, share ideas, discuss challenges, post questions, and search for other members. If you haven't utilized Main Bar Connect, I really recommend getting on there and checking it out. It really helps a ton with getting some ideas. I've had people reach out to me that have had issues in a certain area of law. I've said, hey, go on Main Bar Connect, and like 10 minutes later, I get an email back saying, hey, I got my answer. So I think it's a really useful tool and an important benefit for our members. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's Bar Talk guest, Laura Ligouri of Mindbridge. Our topic today is focused on spiritual well-being, the alignment of work and life to serve your values. And this is, again, one of the Wellbeing Week in Law's themes. So before I do turn it over to Lori, Mindbridge also provides the MSBA with a number of CLE opportunities. Particularly, there will be 3 sessions on implicit bias, one on June 6th, one on August 16th, and one on September 23rd with their educator, Kaylin Tiggs. And so you can also look on our website for that. So without further ado, Laura.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Angela, for having me today. I'm very, very excited to be with you all. So I'm going to share my screen in a minute. Before I disappear and become a little mini block on your screen, if you have any questions at any point, we're going to try to save them to the end. So I'm going to try to put aside 5 minutes towards the end, at least for us to have some questions. If you have some questions, I invite you to use the chat, and those go directly to Angela. That will help us. That will help us facilitate that conversation towards the end. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. Great. Hopefully we see the pretty picture of the brain. And that's good. All right. So Jonathan, can we see the slides? Can I get a thumbs? Okay, thank you so much. Spiritual well-being. I'm going to go ahead and start with a mini introduction to Mindbridge and who I am and all this goodness, and then I will dive into spiritual well-being. So I'm the executive director of Mindbridge. Mindbridge is a nonprofit organization based in the state of Maine, where we use psychology and neuroscience to support human rights work. And so that can be a lot. Psychology and neuroscience to support human rights. Basically, the idea is that in addition to our structures, our institutions, our policy, and our practice, what is it fundamentally about our brains that substantially contribute to and propel violent conflict between groups? And how can our understanding of all of these psychological, neurobiological insights help to inform better, more effective interventions and programming? So really what we're trying to do is trying to center the human at the center of the frame. And I'm very excited to be with you all because often with human rights, we might think of activists, advocates, but very often it is the lawyers who are in charge of these different offices. So we work with quite a number of representatives all around the world. This is me, and this gives you a bit of my information. I'm not going to go terribly into it. But in addition to being the executive director for Mindbridge, I also teach neuroscience psychology at USM, and I am completing my PhD in clinical psychology as well. So lots going on, and I am really excited to kind of blend all of those worlds together to talk about spiritual well-being. And I will say I had to laugh when I was building these slides and I started to look for pictures of spiritual well-being. This is basically what I got. Right. So I plug in spiritual well-being and I get lots of pictures of yogis. So lots of yoga and yogis. And, I'm not sure that all of us are yogis. And I'm not sure we need to be a yogi in order to have spiritual well-being. I think we can kind of, thank you, some of you for smiling about that. I think we can try to make this a little bit more nuanced. And so when we're talking about spiritual well-being, we're talking about the state of harmony and balance in an individual's life that encompasses a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a sense of connectedness. And this might be through kind of physical pursuits. This might be through spiritual pursuits. This might be through the mind. But this is really about achieving this state of harmony and balance, and really having that sense of purpose, meaning, connectedness. And I read this and I thought this was helpful. So I popped this into our slides. Spiritual wellness is connecting to your inner and outer worlds to support you in living your values and purpose, really making that connection. So let's distill this down further. Spiritual well-being. All right, there's lots of components of this. I'm going to move your pictures so I can both see you and see my slides at the same time. Spiritual well-being. We're going to pop purpose and meaning right at the top because often when we're thinking about spiritual well-being, we're thinking of the way in which this becomes our North Star. This is the thing that provides our meaning beyond just the material pursuits in life, right? That mission, that calling. Why did you choose to practice law to begin with? What is it about your beliefs, your values, your background, your experiences that really kind of form that North Star and why you chose to move in this direction? So having that purpose and meaning. We might be looking at our connectedness, right? Our sense of belonging or this connection with each other. Or for some of us, this is a higher power. And we're sort of skirting this line of spirituality, which we'll talk about in a second. But this is really this kind of, how am I connected to those around us, to my colleagues, to those whom I represent, to the community, to my family, to my friends, to myself. And for some of us, also our spiritual practice, sense of connectedness. There's that inner peace. Achieving a state of inner peace and contentment, often through practices such as meditation, reflection, and other spiritual activities. And we lose this, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of how some of this might be attenuated in the practice, but really kind of having this place of calm. And for some of us, the calm in the center of the storm. In the midst of everything that we're doing in our day-to-day, the proliferation of things and tasks, can we kind of achieve that stillness? Transcendence. Engaging in activities that help to transcend the ordinary and connect with something greater than oneself. And for some of us, this is our religious practice. For some of us, this pulls back to the purpose and meaning. This is that purpose and meaning is greater than the self. This is why I'm doing this. Growth and transformation. I was listening to one psychologist who was like, yeah, if we're not growing, we're dead. So really talking about this kind of ever moving practice, right? So not stagnation, but growing, expanding, learning, deepening, ourselves and our connection with the world. And ultimately, this all comes together to the way in which we achieve resiliency and coping. I was listening to another psychologist who was talking about and really defining mental health, not necessarily as achieving happiness and joy in all aspects of everything all the time, but really for her, mental health or wellness meant the response that you have that is commensurate to the experience you are having. And that how are we responding when we face adversity, right? So what is our resiliency? What is our coping in that realm? And so all of this together, purpose, connectedness, inner peace, transcendence, growth, resiliency, collectively comes into this realm of what we think of as spiritual well-being. Okay. Now, there is a really fantastic book. I will say that sometimes when we talk about spiritual well-being, we understand this best in the way that is absent in our lives. So we might sort of start to think about the way in which we might be feeling a lessening of our purpose. We might start to feel a bit disconnected. We might start to feel a little bit less peaceful. We might feel like we're stagnant and not growing. Perhaps we're not, being as quite as resilient. And so all of this feels like a lot of different things. But there is an amazing sociologist who decided to put a word to that experience. Corey Keyes recently published his book called Languishing. Languishing. And so this just came out like 2024, hot off the presses. Subtitle, How to Feel Alive Again in a World That Wears Us Down. Corey Keyes is a sociologist and professor emeritus at Emory University. And this concept of languishing really talks to this idea of this mental wariness that erodes who we are, this self-esteem erodes our motivation, erodes our sense of meaning, right? So what is languishing? Languishing is a state where individuals feel a lack of the good things in life that make life matter, that are meaningful. And you might be able to kind of start to see the signs and symptoms of this, right? That feeling of indifference, right? The kind of emptiness, the low energy, no matter what, you had a good night's sleep and you just kind of feel low energy and tired coming into the work every day. And there are many, many reasons for this, many of which I'm sure you could speak better to than I can. But this might follow kind of consistent periods of stress. There's lots going on. Perhaps there's something that you're grieving, maybe for yourself or for your client. Periods of isolation, kind of working on your own. Perhaps you are someone who has experienced discrimination, trauma, or maybe moral injury, where something that you really truly believe in somehow seems a sense of wrong has happened. And we see this a lot, particularly among those in the legal profession. So this sense of languishing can often feel, and we're going to put this up against spiritual well-being for a second, languishing can look like a lack of purpose, an absence of belonging, suddenly feeling unproductive and disconnected, a sense of running on empty, a lack of growth or feeling of being stalled, and poor mental and emotional well-being, right? Poor mental health, right? So languishing involves recognizing these key indicators that might be signs and symptoms of maybe things are not quite going to the place that they should be or that I would want them to be in my life. And, as somebody in the psychological realm, I do want to draw a bit of a distinction here for a second. That languishing doesn't necessarily mean depression, right? And so I do want to just kind of draw up this distinction for a second. While languishing is a significant mental health issue, and I do really want to emphasize that because it's something that can kind of sneak up on you for a way. It's not as intense as clinical depression, right? People can languish without experiencing the severe symptoms of depression. However, if left unchecked, it can lead to more serious mental health problems, including depression. So we really want to get to know what these signs and symptoms are as they appear for us in our world, how we might not be spiritually thriving, and how this lack of purpose, absence of belonging, feeling unproductive, sense of running on empty, lack of growth, poor mental and emotional well-being can all kind of come together and coalesce pretty quickly. So if we had more time, I might ask you how this is showing up in your life. So I'm just going to kind of ask you to sort of maybe think about that for a second about, is this showing up for you in your life? And if so, how? Because for every person, based on who you are, your personality, your life experiences, what's going on in your life in that moment of time, we might see some of these signs and symptoms stronger or less so, right? So it's going to look a little bit different for everyone. And it becomes important to personalize this process for yourself and how it's showing up for yourself individually. Okay, so I'm going to transition now. And let's talk about, so what do we do? What do we do with this? People are like, oh my gosh, Lord, gracious. Yes, of course I'm feeling this. I'm exhausted. There's so much going on in my life right now. So one of the things that Corey Keyes talks about is what he describes as the 5 psychological vitamins. And I love this because it just kind of distills it down to these 5 components. And we know that, it's spiritual well-being is a lot, but we can start somewhere, right? So let's start with the 5 psychological vitamins. And I'm just going to go through these quickly, and then I'll go a little bit more in depth. All right. So 1, helping others, engaging in acts of kindness and support for others, which enhances our own self of purpose and connection. Learning something new, if even small, pursuing new knowledge or skills to foster personal growth and increase self-efficacy and satisfaction. Engaging in transcendence, and this has to be kind of an intentional act, yeah? So choosing to participate in something that is spiritual or religiously meaningful, right? Purposeful and connection to something greater than oneself, and that might be something secular, that greater than oneself, but really choosing to engage in that. Hey friends, play. How about doing some play? How about that, right? So engaging in activities purely for the sake of joy, purely for the sake of relaxation, nothing else. And purposefully building our relationships, developing, nurturing, warm, trusting relationships that enhance our sense of belonging and provide that emotional support. So let's look at these a little bit in turn. Okay, so we're going to start with helping others. Now, as lawyers, you might say, Laura, oh my God, all I do every day is help others. Yes, yes. And so it might be beneficial to engage in a different kind. And what's really great about these kinds of vitamins is that they tend to work laterally. So meaning engaging in one kind of activity over here that might feel a little bit separate from your practice of law can often translate to your work as well, right? So having a beneficial response over there might be able to translate over here as well. So I'm going to kind of plant that seed for just a second. And so when we think about over there, it might be engaging some sort of volunteer work, supporting your friends and family, even if it's something really small, right? And for the skeptics in the room, I have connected brain basics with each of these. So here we are, right? On a neurobiological level, research pinpoints specific ways that when you help others, you're also helping yourself, right? The rewards of giving and receiving social support creates the ultimate win-win situation. When someone in need receives help, they're not only receiving the direct benefit of that kind of social support, simultaneously, the giver benefits in specific brain regions associated with stress, reward, and caregiving. Right? So this is called the helper's high. So this boosts oxytocin, dopamine, and also increases serotonin, a neurotransmitter that helps to regulate mood. So helping others, yes, might have some moral benefits. It also directly impacts your brain. Cool? All right. Learning and personal growth. The second vitamin is learning something new. Engaging activities that promote that kind of personal growth and learning can significantly increase your sense of self-efficacy and satisfaction, right? Picking that new hobby, taking an educational course, consistently engaging in self-improvement activities, and it could be anything, right? But simply choosing to follow your curiosity outside of the realm of the tasks and the to-dos and the have to get it done, right, can really boost that sense of well-being. And it's that boost that we want. It's that kind of boost, right? Ready for the brain facts? Here we go. Brain facts. Suffolk University. Learning later in life also promotes neuroplasticity, which is the ability of neural networks in the brain to change through growth and reorganization. Developing new neural pathways can help you gain new perspectives in the world around you, take on new challenges, and can also help ward off dementia. Yeah. So, yeah, can learning and personal growth help you with your spiritual well-being? You betcha. And you know what else it's going to do? It's going to help to expand your worldview. It's going to help your tolerance and ability to take on new challenges. And boy, oh boy, maybe dementia. So lots of things here to help us out. Engaging the transcendence. And obviously, if I had the opportunity to talk to each of you, I might ask you what this means for you, right? So how this might work for you might be a spiritual practice. For some of you, it might be a religious practice that you have grown up with. For some of you, it might be a more secular approach to meditation and mindfulness, right? But ultimately, engaging in these activities, the point is to connect yourself to something greater than yourself, offering comfort and a deeper sense of purpose. So spiritual well-being is essential for holistic health and can significantly enhance your overall mental and emotional well-being. So this is a particularly important one, and this is one that needs to be an intentional choice to do this. Now, I will say that I spent quite some time thinking about how to connect this to the brain basics, but understanding the brain and spirituality is actually an exceptionally complex phenomenon. There is a lot going on. There is no one region that I can show you a pretty picture of the brain and say that that region substantially contributes to the experience, which actually what that means is that the way that the brain experiences spirituality, in some very fundamental ways, it suggests that this is an intrinsic component to the human experience because it's so diffused throughout the brain. It's something that you see in just so many different regions. So let's see, I don't have access to the chat overall. So Angela, I'm going to send this to you. Maybe you can send this to our friends. Recently on Point, for those of you who listen to NPR, there was a recent rebroadcast on the neuroscience of spiritual experience. And it was really fantastic. And they really got into this beautiful information about how the brain experiences spirituality and how this really ties into a sense of well-being in one's life. And it's just wonderful. So for those of you who like to listen to podcasts on your way home or to work, this might be something that you might be interested in. Okay. Let's talk about playing and enjoying leisure. So engaging in activities purely for enjoyment is really crucial for our well-being. And I think sometimes, and I really fall victim to this too, that I get super busy. And I often think that the very last thing I have time for is to play a game or to do something or to pet my cat or to get out and go for a walk or do anything that is not work related. But it is a fundamental component to your mental well-being. And I cannot emphasize that enough. Play reduces stress. It increases overall happiness and fosters creativity that can then be applied to the work environment. So the key is often focusing on the joy of the process rather than the outcome, to allow yourself to be fully immersed in the activity itself. And like everything else that's beneficial for you, there are brain benefits, particularly improving your cognition, right? Your memory, your problem solving, your attention, right? Who here probably doesn't want to increase their memory, their problem solving, their attention? And these are things that are increased and supported in the brain just simply through play. And then finally, socializing and building quality relationships. And I realize that some people are sort of drawn to this more than others, depending on where your battery gets filled. For some people, you fill your battery through being through with people, and some people you fill your battery by looking at a wall. So it's a little bit different for everyone. And developing these relationships, there's that warmth, that trust, that mutual giving and receiving that is fundamental to our sense of well-being in the world. And when we think about this in terms of the brain and brain-based mental health, I'm not going to go through all this. I'm going to quickly flick through this and you can look at the video. But there's just innumerable brain benefits: reducing stress, enhancing cognitive function, boosting your mood, improving emotional regulation, strengthening your immune system, promoting neuroplasticity, delaying cognitive decline, enhancing learning and memory, and reducing your risk of mental health concerns overall. Yeah, right? So, all of this together, these five vitamins have very core components of your brain, which in turn play into this idea of spiritual well being and really help to reduce this experience of languishing and moving you ever towards your sense of purpose and meaning and wellness in your life. Okay, with that, I will end here. Here's our contact information. Mindbridge, if you have any further questions and want to contact me about any of this, you can contact me here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Laura. Any questions for Laura? I don't see any. One thing that really strikes me from this presentation is if you go to the Institute for Wellbeing and Law's 5 themes for their Wellbeing Week in Law, is that a lot of these kind of overlap with what those themes are in terms of the connecting and engaging and growing. And so, and you'll find a lot of overlap. And I think it's just, if you do all of these things, hopefully in small bits and pieces, we will all find our wellness and really help ourselves and have a healthier bar. So with that, if there are no further questions.
There was one question in the
Oh,
chat. I believe I know the answer. The name of the book you mentioned, is it Languishing? Languishing.
Languishing by Corey Keyes. So I really thank everybody for coming. This was a great presentation. Hopefully I will see a lot of you in June at the summer bar meeting. And if not, have a great summer. And I will see you in September when we reboot Bar Talk with some more well-being activities. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura.